Can we start? The November 23rd, 2021 special meeting of the Monroe County Legislature will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Alcoffer. Mr. Alcoffer is connecting to the audio. I'll come back to him. Mr. Ansello.
Here.
Mr. Ansello is present. Ms. Barnhart.
Here.
Ms. Barnhart is present. Mr. Baroth.
Here.
Mr. Baroth is present. Mr. Baines. Thought I saw him join. Mr. Baines. Come back to him. Ms. Boyce.
Here.
Ms. Boyce is present. Mr. Brew.
Here.
Mr. Brew is present. President Carbone.
Here.
President Carbone is present. Mr. Colby. Mr. Colby, you're muted.
I'm muted now. Hello.
Yes.
Here.
Mr. Delahanty.
Here.
Mr. Delahanty is present. Mrs. DeFlorio.
Here.
DeFlorio is present. Mr. Dondorfer.
Here.
Mr. Dondorfer is present. Mr. Felder.
Here.
Mr. Felder is present. Mr. Flagler Mitchell.
Here.
Flagler Mitchell is present. Ms. Hasman.
Here.
Hasman is present. Mr. Hebert.
Here.
Hebert is present. Mr. Keller.
He's muted. Here.
Mr. Keller is present. Mr. Keofit-Lassie.
Here.
Keofit-Lassie is present. Ms. Lamar.
Here.
Lamar is present. Mr. Lee.
Here.
Lee is present. Mr. Mafucci.
Here.
Mr. Mafucci is present. Mr. Marinetti.
Here.
Marinetti is present. Mr. Morelli.
Here.
Morelli is present. Ms. Roman.
Here.
Ms. Roman is present. Ms. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Smith is present. Ms. Taylor.
Here.
Taylor is present. Mr. Wilcox.
Here.
Wilcox is present. Ms. Wright. Ms. Wright. Mr. Udelson?
Here.
Mr. Udelson is present. We'll go back to the top. Mr. Alcoffer?
Here.
Alcoffer is present. Mr. Baines?
Here.
Baines is present. Ms. Wright? Ms. Wright? Go ahead.
We will need to suspend the rules of the legislature for the purpose of prohibiting prohibiting public in-purpose attendance. You have a motion before you, which is moved by Legislator Brew and seconded by Legislator Hill. This is a non-debatable motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Roll call vote, please. Roll call vote, please.
Okay, roll call vote.
Mr. Brew? Mr. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Brew votes yes. Mr. Felder?
Yep.
Felder votes yes. Mr. Lee? Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Lee votes yes. Mr. Alcott? Mr. Alcoffer? Mr. Ansello?
Yes.
Mr. Ansello votes yes. Ms. Barnhart?
No.
Ms. Barnhart votes no. Mr. Baroth?
No.
Mr. Baroth votes no. Mr. Baines?
No.
Mr. Baines votes. Ms. Boyce?
Yes.
Boyce votes yes. Mr. Colby?
Yes.
Colby votes yes. Mr. Delahanty?
Yes.
Mr. Delahanty votes yes. Mrs. DeFlorio?
Yes.
Mr. DeFlorio votes yes. Mr. Dondorfer?
Yes.
Dondorfer votes yes. Mr. Flagler Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Flagler Mitchell votes yes. Ms. Hasman?
No.
Hasman votes no. Mr. Hebert?
Yes.
Mr. Hebert votes yes. Keller?
That's for Keller, yes.
Mr. Keller votes yes. Mr. Keophit-Lassie?
Yes.
Mr. Keophit-Lassie votes yes. Ms. Lamar?
Yes.
Ms. Lamar votes yes. Mr. Mafucci?
No.
Mr. Mafucci votes no. Mr. Marinetti?
Yes.
Mr. Marinetti votes yes. Mr. Morelli?
No.
Mr. Morelli votes no. Ms. Roman?
No.
Roman votes no. Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Smith votes yes. Ms. Taylor?
Yes.
Taylor votes yes. Mr. Wilcox?
No.
Ms. White? Ms. Wright? Is that yes?
Yes.
Yes. Ms. Wright votes yes. Mr. Udelson?
No.
Mr. Udelson votes no. President Carbone?
Yes.
President Carbone votes yes. And then Mr. Alcoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Alcoffer votes yes. Vote to suspend the rules is 20-9 passes.
You okay with that, Legislator Baines?
Thank you very much for that courtesy, President.
Okay, let's have a moment of silent prayer, please. Legislator Alcoffer, please lead us in the pledge of allegiance. Well, he's always got a problem with his audio. How about Legislator Dondorfer? Pledge of allegiance.
To the flag,
United States of America.
America,
And to the republic,
to the republic,
For
for
which
which
it
it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with
with
liberty
and
and
justice for all.
justice for all.
for all.
I called this special meeting of the legislature pursuant to the authority vested in me as president of the Monroe County Legislature by section C29C1 of the county charter, 545-5 of the rules of legislature for the county of Monroe. This meeting has been closed to the public and all legislators are participating via teleconference in keeping with this legislature's tradition of openness. The meeting is being live streamed on YouTube through the legislature's official channel. Everyone participating via video or teleconference will please mute their devices except to obtain the floor or cast a vote. If seeking to obtain the floor, please simply state your name and wait for me to call on you before proceeding with your. The clerk will read the full title of each resolution and referral to avoid any confusion as to which item is before the legislature. All votes will be held via voice vote unless a roll call is requested. Today, we will consider two items for adoption before the full legislature, item numbers 1 and 2. We will now hold a public forum. Mr. Clerk.
No one is registered to address the legislature, nor were any written comments submitted.
We will now proceed with the consideration of motions, resolutions, and notices. Will the clerk read the next item on the agenda?
Item number 1, referral 21-0478, authorizing contract with Fusco Law Office for professional legal services for the development of reapportionment mapping and associated services.
Move it, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Seconded by legislator DeFlorio. Before any discussion, I'd like to provide some background on why I've decided to move forward with professional help for a redistricting commission. I'm allowed by the county charter to execute on this without bringing to the legislature. However, I want to ensure that you are all aware of this action. As far as a matter of urgency, the charter prescribes a 3-month deadline for the redistricting process, which we must ensure is completed according to law. Both of our BOE commissioners and one other member of the commission failed to attend the last meeting on the redistricting on November 12th. Thus, we didn't have a quorum to proceed. If the appointed commission members need to make progress, I will act to do so. Let me start by saying I do not rely on past practices for the guidance of how to best serve the people of Monroe County. Past practices should be a starting point and improved upon whenever possible. This is especially true for an activity such as this. Port redistricting is an event that only occurs once every 10 years. Things done in the past may or may not make sense if we simply follow them today. We should not seek to simply repeat past traditions, especially those of such rare events, but seek to improve and build upon such retaining. The Council for the Redistricting Commission will further this goal. As far as the law action, according to the Monroe County Charter, Section C24, the President of the Legislature can, and I quote, as delegated by the legislature, enter into and execute an agreement or contract on behalf of the county within budgetary appropriations, therefore adopted by the legislature. Further, the charter states, quote, the county legislature shall make provisions for the employment of such legislative staff as may be needed in the discharge of its duties. Such staff may include independent legal counsel or persons with expertise in research, policy analysis, budget analysis, planning, and other matters relating to the legislative duties of the county legislature. Such staff may be retained by direct employment contract or other agreement. As far as an RFQ or an RFP, this referral notes that the total amount of the contract would not exceed $20,000. Therefore, it is within my purview to proceed without an RFQ or RFP. As far as the law firm that we have been in contract with for the redistricting, we did seek out multiple law firms. Number one being Joseph Burns Esquire. He's one of the top 3 in New York State. However, he has a retainer agreement with both BOE commissioners and provides them with legal assistance because of the minimal amount of knowledge of the law in their industry, of which they are commissioners. We also reached out to Harder, Seacrest, and Emery, one of the top 3 law firms in Monroe County with a strong political department. The cost for Harder, Seacrest would have been enormous, and nothing would have been done in the time frame that it was needed. Adam Fusco and John Ciampoli are part of the top 3 in New York State, with John Ciampoli being considered the best statewide. They were available and stated they could do the work in the time frame needed. Any discussion on this further? Hearing
Mr.
none.
President,
Yes.
Legislator Barra,
Yeah, Legislator Barr.
thank you so much. And also thank you for your description of why this is a matter of urgency and the timeline of events that led you to do this, as well as citing county law, specifically referring to the legislature's duties and how you are entitled to acquire counsel, or you're entitled to make contracts when the legislature's duties are being fulfilled. I would point out to you that the duties of the redistricting commission is not the same as the legislator's duty. We are only part of that commission. The commission's duties are very much different from that of the legislature. You do not have the authority to make those contracts under that county law. But we'll move forth. Looking at the referral that you put forth and got to us a few days ago, I want to point out a few errors, at least I hope they're errors. If you have a copy of the referral in front of you, the first paragraph reads, I recommend your honorable body amend the matter of urgency regarding file number 21-0468, which is entitled Authorizing the Legislative District Revision Committee I'm assuming you meant commission. Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. To retain professional services, and then there's a comma. It says Resolution 381 of 2021. And I went looking for that, and it turns out that's a PWAB referral. It's Resolution 210. 381 is to increase and improvement of facilities in the Gates Charlie Ogden Sewer District, acquisition of property at 13 and 15 Carroll Street from the village of Churchville. I believe this must be an error. Would you agree, sir?
It seems like it is a error. Legislator Hebert?
I'm sorry, what was the question? I was breaking up. Mr. Baroth was breaking up when he spoke.
The referral under question here, 210-478, makes reference to amending a previous referral, and it says Resolution 381 of 2021 in the referral. That seems to be incorrect since that's a PWAB referral. Could it be that they meant 468?
That you usually do excellent work, Legislator Baroth, through the president. I would suspect that you may be right.
Could the
You're
clerk
likely
check?
right.
Could the clerk check on this? Since we're talking about something that's rather important, as the president himself stated, we want to make sure we get this right. Could the clerk please check? I didn't draft this, so I don't know the answers. Mr. President, it's okay if the clerk checks?
He is checking right now.
Thank you, sir.
Legislator Brough, just to clarify, what did you want me to check?
If you look at the referral, it makes reference to a Resolution 381 of 2021, which happens to be a PWAB referral, and clearly this cannot be correct. I am wondering what the referral is supposed to be referring to here. I suspect it might be 210-468, but I could be wrong. I'm not the author of this.
I guess as the clerk, I'm not the author of it either, so I'm not sure what you wanted me to look up. I'm confused, and I'll look up anything you want me to, but I'm not sure what you're needing. Me
Okay. Look at the referral in front of us, 210-478. If you look at the first paragraph, it states it wants to amend a matter of urgency, 210468, which is entitled authorizing the legislative district division. It says committee, but it should be commission, to retain professional services. Then there's a comma, Resolution 381 of 2021. I do not understand why that is there. It's a PWAB referral, but maybe something else was supposed to be there.
He's looking it up right now. Thank you, Legislator Baroth. Give us a minute, please.
Fair enough.
Legislator Baroff.
Yes.
So I have the referral in front of me. I apologize. I was so confused at what you were asking. I apologize.
No worries.
It appears that the file number for the referral is correct. On the 210468, and it appears that the resolution number is wrong on that.
And you would agree it should be 468?
Yes,
So the 210468 is the correct referral that it's referencing. The resolution is wrong. The resolution number is wrong.
Okay, so that's the second error in this referral. If you go down, and Mr. President, I'll point this out to you. If you go down to the specific legislative actions required are list, there's two of them required. The first one doesn't say anything. It says literally authorize the president of the legislature, and then just says in accordance with all these other things, but it doesn't say what it authorizes the president of the legislature to do. I can read it out to you entirely if you would wish.
could you repeat that question again, please?
Sure. Under the specific legislative actions required, there's one. Number one says authorize the president of the legislature in accordance with section C2-4, et cetera, of the procurement policy, New York State General Municipal Law for the period of November 9, 21 through December 31st, 2021, period. So it just says, because of these two rules, we're authorizing you to do something, but we don't say what that something is.
Oh my, I'm looking at the wrong one.
It might be to retain services perhaps, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, that would make sense. Authorize, that's what it's all for, authorizing me to retain these services.
So as the maker of the motion, do you agree that's what it is?
Yes.
Okay. So I ask this because if you are retaining the lawyer, who is that lawyer's client?
The legislature.
No, sir. You are making this contract. Are you saying you as the representative of the legislature, as the president?
Yeah, and the county charter allows me to retain outside services. We got a dog.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you quite there, Mr. President.
Yes, the county charter authorizes me to retain services on behalf of the legislature.
Okay. So you're saying that the legislature would be the client, correct? So does that mean representatives of all the caucus would be able to able to ask questions of this lawyer and his firm in regards to this contract? And if so, when?
Absolutely. Through me, absolutely.
Only through you?
Yes.
Okay. So, and just to be clear, this lawyer then is not being retained by the redistricting commission and has no relationship with the redistricting commission's work, correct?
Yes, but the redistricting commission can rely on the to help with the redistricting, so we meet the legality of the redistricting.
Well, we'll have to have a meeting about the redistricting committee to make that determination, but I assure you that I will have some severe doubts about relying upon this particular lawyer. But leaving that aside, all right. So you're retaining this lawyer, and I'm assuming that the legislative action number 2, which mentions a sum of a combined cost of $50,000, is another typo. In fact, it should be $20,000, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's up to 1, 2, 3, 4 errors in a matter of urgency. I mean, there's a reason why we should not use matters of urgency. We make errors when we use matters of urgencies.
Yeah, we're rushed on this.
I believe you were rushed, yes. Okay, so you said, and you referred to a few people, a few law firms, that several consultants were considered. Who considered them?
I did it with the help of legislator Hebert.
So it was you and Legislator Hebert.
Yes.
Okay. And my question then, as you mentioned also in the referral, that Fusco was rated the most qualified,
Well, he's done this for several other counties.
but
Successfully,
rated of all the people you talked to, he was rated most qualified.
in our opinion, yes.
Fair enough. What was this based upon? What rubric did you use? Are there any records of that?
It was based on his services to other counties.
Are there any written documents is what I'm getting at, sir?
Legislator Hebert, were there any documents?
The only documentation is in the notes that you have, referring to the three companies and why they were chosen. They're in
Okay.
the-
What was that Maine County? I can't recall right now, but Maine County.
Yeah, hang on 1 second. I'm gonna have to find it.
I believe it was a county almost as large as ours.
Yeah, there were several. If I may, Legislator Barroso, address your question. The
Please.
research for the necessary support from the Reapportionment Legal Counsel led to what are widely considered to be the three most qualified and experienced groups in New York State. First was Joseph Burns Esquire. He's one of the top three in the state. He has a retainer agreement with the BOE commissioners, as President Carbone stated. And the second was Harder, Seacrest, and Emery, and they could not complete the work in the time frame needed. Fusco Ciampoli said that they could, and their fees were the most reasonable of the three. Therefore, we went with them. That's the recommendation.
Okay,
And
so
it's-
my understanding then from what you're saying is that in fact, there was no rubric used. You had conversations with others and they determined who the best people would be. My question then, through the president to the administration, is such a practice of networking to determine who should get a contract in compliance with procurement policy, even if the amount is less than $20,000.
Through the president, this is John Bringerwatt. There's no formal RFP requirement for services $20,000 or under.
So they can do whatever they want, correct, through the president?
I believe that's one of the points I brought up.
Correct.
Well, you brought up a lot of points, Mr. President. I did the best I can to write them all down.
You're doing a
Okay.
great.
But I would recommend to the legislature that, this is certainly not a best practice, be that as it may. So since Legislator Hebert, you are, heavily involved in this, as it turns out, through the president to you, I want to point out that you, in the original referral, which is 468, that is now being amended by this new referral, which number is 478, you were very eloquent. You wrote, quote, "It is the goal of the Monroe County Legislature to ensure a fair redistricting process so as to best serve the residents of the county, and ensuring," and I'm editing out things, "ensuring the integrity and lawful compliance of our Legislative District Revision Commission is of the utmost importance. And retaining professional services as a legal counsel would support this goal. The importance of retaining such professional services cannot be overstated, and authorizing the commission's retaining of professional services as professional services such as legal counsel will benefit all residents of Monroe County, not retaining on behalf of the legislature, but retaining on behalf of the commission." And he further went, "Authorizing the Legislative District Revision Commission to retain such professional services guarantees a bipartisan and community-wide benefit." And now we're not doing that. That's not happening.
May I respond?
I was going to ask you a question.
Okay.
And then you can respond to that question if that's okay. So rather than executing a contract on behalf of the commission, now we're executing a contract on behalf of the legislature. And no one can talk to these lawyers except through the president. Do you consider this new referral to be a friendly amendment? And if so, why?
The answer is yes, I do consider it to be a friendly amendment. I believe you were one of two commissioners on the redistricting commission that showed up for the scheduled meeting on, was it November 12th? I'm sorry, a week or so ago.
Yeah, the
When-
one with the 19 hours notification, yes.
Yep, but whatever. The bottom line is 3 people didn't show up. Therefore, no action could be taken because you didn't even have a quorum. How long do you intend to go before, we start to run out the clock and violate the county charter on the timeliness of this work? But bottom line is, I do consider it friendly. Everybody can use the lawyers that are being provided. Governor Hochul signed a law on October 27th, changing the game. We certainly don't have any expertise in this county upon that. I mean, as much as I like the county's law firm and appreciate their work, this is a once in 10 years. None of these guys, have expertise or, spend their full-time jobs doing this. I've watched many times when the county engages outside counsel for support. You've done the same over the years. And bottom line is, this is no different in my view. This is trying to get the work of the legislature, which the redistricting commission does what? It reports back to the legislature its recommendation, correct? That was a question.
I'm not going to engage a direct conversation. We're not allowed to do that. I was just letting you finish your response to my questions. I don't want to interact with the president in being an interlocutor.
I get it. So yes, the answer to your question, as far as why these mistakes were in there, it's pretty clear that most likely I picked up the wrong copy when I sent it in to the clerk for inclusion. There is a corrected copy that has basically eliminated the first item, and that has 468 in both places. That was the one that was supposed to be sent in. Unfortunately, and I think this is pretty well known, I had a major PC crash, and my computer, my laptop on which I live, it's sitting in front of me, is barely functional. And so I attribute it to that, although it could just be my stupidity.
Well, I would not think that. So moving on, thank you for your response. One of the things that, and your answer somewhat disappoints me in the sense that you consider it a friendly amendment, because one of the things that when we discussed the previous amendment, 468, you stated, and I quote, in the legislature, you said, without naming names, end quote, that you were asked to introduce 210-468 by members of the redistricting commission. And you did not want to name names. And at the time, the discussion devolved into the concept of it didn't matter if the commission formally or did not formally make such a request. And the reasoning behind that was because the majority of 3 was supportive of this request. Now, I don't consider that to be a legitimate reason to support voting for that in the first place, but the legislature did. We made that assumption. We assumed the majority of the commission was supportive of this referral, or the original 468. Turns out that assumption was false. In fact, only one member of the redistricting commission supported the idea of flouting procurement policies of requesting a $50,000 contract be made outside procurement policy. And that was
Mr.
why.
President, I'm
Excuse me, I have the floor, sir. Unless you have a point of order or point of information, I have the floor. I have the floor, sir. Please do not interrupt. Mr. President, please stop the legislator from interrupting. Please stop the legislator from interrupting. I would appreciate that. Mr. Felder, please do not interrupt. You do not have the floor. Please do not interrupt. Sir, you do not have the floor. Yes, you're still talking. You do not have the floor. You don't have the right to speak right now unless you have a point of order or a point of information.
Point of order.
Make it quick.
Questions are beyond the scope of the referral. He's asking questions about people's mindsets and who did this.
Thank you. He made a point of order, sir. He said my thing was beyond the scope of the referral. I was asking about the original amendment. Original referral, we're now amending. Is that beyond the scope of this amendment?
Yeah, beyond the scope of this amendment.
Mr. President, is his point of order correct that I am speaking beyond the scope of the conversation when I'm talking about the original referral we are now currently amending? Is that beyond it?
I'll uphold this point of order.
You will. I appeal the ruling of the president.
Okay, roll call vote.
I need a second, sir.
Second.
Thank you.
Who was the second?
Second,
This is to appeal the rule of the chair. Mr. Brew. Yes sustains the rule of the president.
Yes.
Mr. Brew votes yes. Mr. Felder.
Yes.
Mr. Felder votes yes. Mr. Lee.
Yes.
Mr. Lee votes yes. Mr. Alcoffer. Mr. Alcoffer. Mr. Ansella.
Yes.
Mr. Ansella votes yes. Ms. Barnhart.
No.
Barnhart votes no. Mr. Baroff.
No.
Mr. Baroff votes no. Mr. Baines.
No.
Mr. Baines votes no. Ms. Boyce.
Yes.
Ms. Boyce votes yes. Mr. Colby.
No.
Mr. Colby votes no. Mr. Delahanty.
Yes.
Mr. Delahanty votes yes. Florio.
Yes.
Florio votes yes. Mr. Dondorfer.
Yes.
Dondorfer votes yes. Mr. Flagler Mitchell.
Yes.
Mr. Flagler Mitchell votes yes. Ms. Hasman.
No.
Hasman votes no. Mr. Hebert.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Keller votes yes. Mr. Keelfit-Lassie.
Yes.
Mr. Keelfit-Lassie votes yes. Ms. Lamar.
Yes.
Ms. Lamar votes yes. Mr. Mafucci.
No.
Mr. Mafucci votes no. Mr. Marinetti.
Yes.
Marinetti votes yes. Mr. Morelli.
No.
Morelli votes no. Ms. Roman.
No.
Roman votes no. Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Smith votes yes. Ms. Taylor.
Yes.
Taylor votes yes. Mr. Wilcox.
No.
Mr. Wilcox votes no. Ms. Wright.
Yes.
Ms. Wright votes yes. Mr. Udelson.
No.
Udelson votes no. President Carbone.
Yes.
President Carbone votes yes. And then we'll try Mr. Alcoffer one more time. 18-10. Rule of the chair is sustained.
Well, then I'll go on to another topic. That's okay.
Mr.
I
President.
still have the floor. Thank you. So, to the president, to Majority Leader Brew, I have a quick question. As a member of the Redistricting Commission, do you support the president's request for the Monroe County Legislature to grant the president the authority to retain legal counsel for the redistricting process? A yes or no, if you can.
Yes, I do, as long as it is within the county procurement policy.
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear you, so I'm sorry.
Yes, as long as it's in the county procurement policy.
Thank you very much. Okay. I will not be supporting this referral. I'm kind of disappointed in the attempt by some to shut down conversation about what we're doing and why. I would say that, you know, in fact, I'm sure of it now. I've thought about this. I'm the only commissioner to actually attend every single one of the meetings. No one else has done so, and yet I'm being silenced here by others. Gotta love politics. I withdraw. Thank you.
Any further
Mr.
discussion?
President, I make a
Legislator
motion.
Berman.
Mr. President,
Mr. President.
Legislator Felder,
Legislator Felder has the floor. Go ahead,
I
Legislator.
make a motion that we amend the referral to correct the errors that Legislator Barros has outlined before we vote on it.
Seconded by George Hebert.
Seconded by Flagler Mitchell as well.
Do we need this in writing?
Mr. President, George Hebert here. I have one of the LAs already trying to create that for you so you can see it. It's to make two changes, to change the number to the correct one, as Mr. Baroth pointed out, 468.
20,000?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I should interrupt. My bad. Go ahead.
And the second one, the first legislative action is actually not needed. You don't need to reference all that stuff. So it was supposed to be deleted and change number 2 to number 1. There's only one legislative action required.
And also quick change that 50,000 to 20,000.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
And given all that, I'd like to second that as well. Mr. President, you catch that?
Yes. So is there any discussion on these corrections Legislator Baroth brought to the floor? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
I have one quick comment, sir. I just want to say one quick thing if I have the floor for a second. Basically, I want to make it clear that while I oppose this referral, I do believe in doing the best job we can with whatever, comes forth. And that is why I'm seconding this, why I point out these errors. Like, even if it passes against my vote, I want it to be the best possible thing it can be. And I would urge that sort of mindset on others, particularly in the years to come. I just point that out. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Mr. President, George Hebert.
Legislator Hebert.
I would just like to thank Legislator Brough for pointing out my errors, and I apologize for them to the entire group. Sorry for the storm that it created, and I will seek to do better work in the future. My apologies.
Legislator Barnhart.
Yes, Legislator Barnhart.
Thank you. Through the president, this contract goes through the end of the year, correct?
Yes.
Okay, through the president, does this mean that this entire process is for redistricting is intended to be finished this calendar year?
Yes, that's why this law firm assured us that they would get it done in a timely fashion.
Through the president, has this law firm been presented with maps to evaluate?
I don't think that's germane to the contract or to the issue at hand.
Okay, well, I would like to explain my vote. This is.
Point of order, have we voted on the amendment yet?
We're still on the amendment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All in favor of the amendment was moved, seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yep.
Do we need a roll call vote?
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Mr. President, can I have the floor again?
Yeah, you can have the floor.
All right, thank you very much. Sorry about that. So I would just like to explain my vote. And, so far, there's been no substantive meeting of the bipartisan districting commission that is required by our charter. And the majority has made it clear now in this meeting that the new map will be drawn and presented to us without carefully considered input from all caucuses. And, drawing maps in a back room is not the way we should do this. We have only 5 weeks left in the year. That is not enough time for all stakeholders to weigh in. It's not enough time for a good, fair map to be produced. We all know why this is being rushed. And I want to point out that there's a lot of research to support truly bipartisan map drawing. There are states that have independent redistricting commissions, even states that don't, but have bipartisan checks produce more fair maps. Bipartisan inclusive maps are just more fair. And that's what we'll have if we wait and we take our time. We could have that now, but given the conversation tonight, it's clear that we're not going to have that. I would encourage you to reconsider.
Thank you.
And so I will be voting no on this because I really think that the people of Monroe County deserve a better process. Thank you.
Legislator Roman. Legislator Roman.
Yes. Through you, Mr. President, to you. You mentioned in your explanation as to why you thought this was important, you said something along the lines of, if the commission doesn't do the work, then you will. So I have a question in regards to that meeting that you led where there was no quorum. Was that meeting rescheduled?
No.
Was there an attempt to reschedule that?
Not as of yet.
Is there a reason why?
Because we're trying to get this straight with the law firm. And once we got this going with the law firm, hopefully we will have another meeting. But we're not sure of the new laws with the governor, what Governor Hochul did. And I don't want to go ahead and do anything that's not appropriate.
Wasn't the intent of that initial meeting to meet to talk about getting a lawyer? I'm confused.
Yes, it was, and nobody showed up. That's why I
I
did.
showed up.
I'm sorry, Legislator Broth. We didn't have a quorum.
But so that meeting, you chose not to reschedule that meeting.
No, I went ahead with hiring the law firm.
Okay.
Right.
So with that being said, I'm just going to explain my vote as well. I do not feel that this is a bipartisan effort. This is definitely, from your own words, you've decided to go ahead and acquire a lawyer on the behalf of the legislature, not even on the behalf of the commission. It sounds like some of that work has already started, so I will be voting against this particular measure. Thank you.
President,
Mr. President.
President,
Who's that?
Legislator Felder.
Legislator Felder?
Yes, I just want to point out that ultimately the redistricting is in the hands of the legislature, not the commission. Commission only makes recommendations, and it is us as the legislature who actually has to vote on the lines. But with that, I'd like to just go ahead and move the question.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion to call the question. We need a, we'll do a
I
roll.
second it.
Yeah, we have a second.
On the call the question, Mr. Brew,
Call the question, Mr. Brew.
Mr. Brew? Mr. Felder?
Yes.
Mr. Felder votes yes. Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Lee votes yes. Mr. Alcoffer? Mr. Alcoffer? Mr.
Yes.
Ansella votes yes. Mr. Baroff?
Yes.
Mr. Baroff votes yes. Mr. Baines?
No.
Baines votes no. Ms. Boyce?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Colby?
Yes.
Colby votes yes. Mr. Delahanty?
Yes.
Delahanty votes yes. Mr. Florio?
Yes.
Mr. Gondorf?
Yes.
Mr. Gondorfer votes yes. Mr. Flagler Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Flagler Mitchell votes yes. Ms. Hasman?
No.
Hasman votes no. Mr. Hebert?
Yes.
Mr. Hebert votes no. Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Keller votes yes.
Excuse me, this is Mr. Hebert. I did vote yes.
Did I say no? I apologize. I wrote you
I
down.
think you skipped me.
As Barnhart, did I? Oh, boy. It's Barnhart.
No.
My apologies. Mr. Keller, you said yes, correct? Mr. Keller?
Correct, yes.
My apologies. Mr. Teofit
Yes.
Ms. Lamar?
Yes.
Ms. Lamar votes yes. Mr. Mafucci?
No.
Mr. Mafucci votes no. Mr. Marinetti?
Yes.
Mr. Marinetti votes yes. Mr. Morelli?
No.
Morelli votes no. Ms. Roman?
No.
Ms. Roman votes no. Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Smith votes yes. Ms. Taylor?
Yes.
Taylor votes yes. Mr. Wilcox?
No.
Mr. Wilcox votes no. Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Wright votes yes. Mr. Udelson?
No.
Mr. Udelson votes no. President Carbone?
Yes.
President Carbone votes yes. Let's go back. Mr. Alcoffer? Mr. Alcoffer?
Mr. President?
Yes.
Can I change my vote to no, please? I was thrown off by the order.
That's okay. It happens.
So noted, Legislator
Thank
Brown.
you.
Legislator Alcoffer on the line, he lost his connection. He voted yes.
And then I had one other one, I believe. Did I miss somebody?
Brew?
Oh, yes, Legislator Brew.
Yes, I apologize. I had computer problems as well, and my vote is yes.
You got Frank. Frank, are you there now? Frank?
Okay,
Yes, there we
all
go.
right, there we go.
Okay.
20
Yes.
to 9, the call to question passes.
So now we go.
Yes, roll call vote
Roll.
on amended resolution. Mr. Brew,
Yes.
Mr. Brew votes yes. Mr.
Somebody needs to mute.
Mr. Felder,
Yes.
Mr. Felder votes yes. Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Lee votes yes. Mr. Alcoffer.
Yes.
Mr. Alcoffer votes yes. Mr. Ansello.
Yes.
Mr. Ansello votes yes. Ms. Barnhart.
No.
Ms. Barnhart votes no. Mr. Baroff.
No.
Roth votes no. Mr. Baines.
No.
Baines votes no. Ms. Boyce.
Yes.
Ms. Boyce votes yes. Mr. Colby.
Yes.
Colby votes yes. Mr. Delahanty.
Yes.
Mr. Delahanty votes yes. Mrs. DeFlorio.
Yes.
DeFlorio votes yes. Mr. Dondorfer.
Yes.
Mr. Dondorfer votes yes. Mr. Flagler Mitchell.
Yes.
Mr. Flagler Mitchell votes yes. Ms. Hasman.
No.
Hasman votes no. Mr. Hebert.
Yes.
Mr. Hebert votes yes. Mr. Keller.
Yes.
Mr. Keller votes yes. Mr. Pufet Lassie.
Yes. Yes.
Lassie votes yes. Ms. Lamar.
Yes.
Lamar votes yes. Mr. Mafucci.
No.
Mafucci votes no. Mr. Marinetti.
Yes.
Mr. Marinetti votes yes. Mr. Morelli.
No.
Mr. Morelli votes no. Ms. Roman.
No.
Roman votes no. Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Smith votes yes. Ms. Taylor.
Yes.
Ms. Taylor votes yes. Mr. Wilcox.
No.
Wilcox votes no. Ms. Wright.
Yes.
Ms. Wright votes yes. Mr. Udelson.
No.
Mr. Udelson votes no. President Carbone.
Yes.
President Carbone votes yes. 20 to 9, resolution as amended passes.
Next item.
Item number 2, referral 21-0479, authorizing contract with Mr. Art Plua for analysis of 2022 Monroe County proposed budget in an amount not to exceed $5,000.
Moving, Mr.
Move it.
President.
Second.
Seconded by legislator DeFlorio. Before discussion, I'd like to go over a few things as I did in the last one. As with the previous item, I want to provide some background on why I've decided to move forward with professional help for our budget oversight responsibilities. I'm allowed by the county charter to execute on this without bringing it to the legislature. However, I want to ensure you are aware of this action and the reasons for it. I deem this a matter of urgency. The county executive presented his proposed 2022 Monroe County budget to the legislature on November 9th. It consists of over 750 pages of detailed budget information. 4 legislature committee meetings last night and 3 more will meet tonight to begin discussion of the budget and many changes made in it. The final budget review by the Ways and Means Committee is scheduled for the next Thursday, December 2nd. Proper oversight of the budget and county expenses is one of, if not the most important role this body is responsible for. As far as outside accounting help, as recently as the last administration, one of our caucus hired Mr. Paul Haney to conduct a thorough budget analysis, which he was clearly qualified to do. They paid him for it out of their office budget and kept its results within their caucuses, which was equally clear they're right. So yes, this has been done before. As far as legality, according to the Monroe County Charter, Section C24, the president of the legislature can, and I quote, as delegated by the legislator, authorize, enter into, and execute any agreement or contract on behalf of the county within budgetary appropriations, therefore adopted by the legislature. Furthermore, the charter states, quote, the county legislature shall make provisions for the employment of such legislative staff as may be needed in the discharge of its duties. Such staff may include independent legal counsel or persons with expertise in research, policy analysis, budget analysis, planning, and other matters relating to the legislative duties of the county legislature. Such staff may be retained by direct employment or other arrangements. As far as the RFQ and RFP, as in the last action, the referral notes the total amount of the contract would not exceed $5,000, and thus it is within my purview to proceed without an RFQ or RFP. I'd just like to let everyone know the results of this budget analysis will be made available to all members of the legislature, and I believe every legislature will be content to receive such expert help. With that being said, any discussion on this referral?
Legislator Mafucci.
Legislator Mafucci.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is it possible to get a resume for this gentleman?
Yes.
Can you share it, please?
I don't have it with me, but we'll give that to you in writing within a day.
Thank you. I have a couple other questions, Mr. President. Can you share with me his experience with analyzing a $1.3 billion budget?
Yes, we did talk to Robert, our group CPAs, Art Plua and Bonadillo were considered. While it was clear EAFPR and Bonadillo had the capability to do excellent work, their services would clearly be very expensive. Art Plua was selected. He is known to be an outstanding budget analyst with many years of government budget expertise. He is available immediately for a very reasonable hourly fee within the $5,000 budget.
Thank you. I have a couple other questions. Mr. President, can you confirm his current employment?
No.
Thank you. I do have a couple statements to make. I did go out, and it appears he may be the controller in Gates, town of Gates. And if that's true, I went and looked at their budget, and I have some concerns relative to they're exceeding the tax cap to the tune of about 15% in 2021. Obviously, there was a lot of increased assessed value during that year, but I would want to ask him some questions to make sure that he understands how that all works. Clearly, I won't have that opportunity. Thank you.
Any further discussion on this referral?
Mr. President,
Who's that?
Josh, Legislator Burrow.
Legislator Baroff, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just want to speak to this referral briefly and then make an amendment, which I actually just emailed to the clerk so he can prepare sharing it. Essentially, I was very happy to hear you mention the fact that the Minority Caucus in the past has hired former legislator Paul Haney to review the budget for us. And we, in fact, did retain the information within the caucus, because reviewing the budget is a very political process. And I would speak for myself, I suspect for many other members of my caucus, at least, and perhaps some other members of different caucuses, that, the information that comes from this contract, I don't want to pay for it. And I don't want my caucus to pay for it either. Or frankly, I don't think the law department should be paying for this. This is something that's a political action that you've decided to take, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that, your source of funding was incorrect. It should not be coming from the Department of Law. It should either be coming from the majority office or from your office, because you're making this choice. I submitted an amendment that essentially redacts the Department of Law professional services and adds in the majority office with the appropriate fund lines as well. And I would appreciate if I could have a second for this amendment, and then I can wait for everyone to take a look at it.
Second.
Okay, we have a second for Legislator Baroff's amendment, and are we going to share it on the screen? The clerk is working on that right now.
But the clerk did get it, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Who was the second on that?
I think it was Bain.
Legislator Bain.
So we have to vote on the amendment now. Roll call vote.
Well, after discussion of the amendment.
The amendment,
And if I may speak to it and highlight what was changed, because of the quality of the original PDF, it's difficult to read.
Go ahead, Legislator Barat.
Thank you. On the language on the actual legal language is on section 2. And basically we took out the words Department of Law, General Fund 901, Fund Center 1601, et cetera, and inserted Legislature Majority Office, General Fund 9001, Fund Center 101, et cetera, professional services. And those funds are in fact available currently in that line. And just to speak to this, when I first looked at this referral, I was thinking to myself, forgive me, oh no, here's another partisan attack. Oh, what are they doing now? You know, that typical response you might expect. But then I thought about this and went, you know what? We've done this too. We've actually hired people to say, hey, could you look at this budget? It's really tough to get through in the time constraints that I mentioned. So, Mr. President, you're correct. It's a challenge, and having outside eyes is a good thing. However, as you well know, this is I hate to use the term, but it is a political choice, and we should not be having, the law department pay for this when that is not, in fact, their role. The appropriate source for this funding is, in fact, from our offices, our budget, because we're making this request to do our duties. It is our duty, as you pointed out. And so to that end, I really think this has to come from the Monroe County Legislature, not from the Monroe County Executive Department and the Law Department. And that's why we made this, this suggestion, myself and my second, Legislator Baines. This is important to get right. You're right to want more information. There's nothing wrong with that. But you're wrong to try to have someone else pay for it. We have the funds. The budget year is nearly over. This is the appropriate funding source. And so that is why I made this amendment. And I hope that all members of all three caucuses can agree that, in fact, this is the correct move. I live in hopes. Thank you. And if there are any questions about this, I'm happy to answer any questions, of course.
Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. Now we'll go to the roll call vote.
roll call vote on the amendment.
Mr. President, this is Legislator Heber. Could you just wait 1 second before you go to the vote, please? I'm trying to find a reference here and I'm struggling a little bit.
Okay.
Mr. President, I don't know what the amendment is. My Zoom went out and came back in, but he'd already made, Legislator Barth had already made the amendment suggestion. I haven't even heard it. I don't know what it is.
If I may, Mr. President?
Yes.
Legislative Felder, essentially what it does is it takes the $5,000 to pay for this contract from the Legislative Majority Office General Fund for professional services, which is the same fund that the Minority Office used in past years for such contracts. And it takes removes reference to the Department of Law General Fund, which is in the Department of Law. That's the only change, this funding source. And funds are available currently in that line in this budget year that's ending in a month.
I could be mistaken, Legislator Baroth, but per the charter, shouldn't it can come from the legislature office?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Per the charter, I don't think the payment can come from the legislature office.
It has in the past, and I can't give you a charter reference, but I assure you that just as you're allowed to purchase professional services under $20,000, so was the Minority Caucus, and so is the Majority Caucus. This is in fact, I won't use the word past practice. It's not past practice. It's a legitimate use of funds, and I would suggest we could ask the administration if in fact this is appropriate or not.
Go ahead.
Well, no, fair. Through you to the administration, is this in compliance with the county charter? The amendment.
Maybe.
Through you, Mr. President, yes, there's no reason that the funds couldn't be expended from a county legislature fund center.
Thank you.
You done, Legislator Burrow?
Yes, Legislator Hebert.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President, to the administration. It's also true for section C2-4, subparagraph 10 of the county charter, that those funds could also come from the source identified in the resolution, correct?
Mr. President, please just one moment. Our county attorney is pulling up that section of our charter. Thank you.
And while we're waiting, a point of information, on my amendment, it's missing, there's 2 pages to it. We're just viewing 1 page of it. I mean, we're reviewing the legal documentation, but there's also the introduction page of the referral that was also similar. There it is, similarly amended. I just want people to recognize that was there as well.
Through
Thank
you,
you, Mr.
Mr.
Clerk.
President, was that reference to the charter C24B10?
Correct. Sorry, I left. That is correct. I'm sorry, I left out the T. The B is in Bravo, Mr. President.
So through you, Mr. President, I don't dispute the authority to enter into the contract. I do take issue with the separation of powers question of spending money from executive department without transferring the funds.
My last comment, I guess, Mr. President, I don't quite understand the law offices. I understand what they're saying. I'm not sure. I'm certainly not an attorney, so I can't say that I have the authority or the legal knowledge to challenge or whatever, but I have 2 other lawyers that have told me that this is legitimate. In any case, it is my view that this amendment, I mean, let me explain my vote. I'm not going to be voting for the amendment simply because the provision of the reported information to all members of the legislature, Democratic caucus, Black and Asian caucus, Republican caucus, to me says that this should be funded by not by one office, not by the Democratic office, not by the Black and Asian caucus, not by the Republican caucus. So I will be voting against this amendment. Thank you, sir.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Legislator Felder here. I tend to believe that this entire piece of legislation is unnecessary. I think it could be expended from your office as the president and just enter into a contract, and it will cover the entire legislature if you did it. And then we won't have to worry about this argument back and forth between the who should be paying for it, because as long as the funding is there in the budget and is available and there, that seems to be the quickest and easiest way to do it without going through all of this.
We talked about that, but we wanted to be transparent with this and not send any other.
The transparency is when you give notice to the legislature that you've done it. That's all the transparency you need, and making them available to all the caucuses. You can do that with the memo.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I'm actually forced to agree with Legislator Felder. The fact is, this is, and I'll use the word about me, it's like picking a fight that you don't need to pick. We can simply, fund this from within the legislature itself. And I'll point out that, your statement about, sharing this all fairly and equally with all caucuses, that sounds great. And I hope you do if this passes. But the referral itself makes no mention of that. And a legal resolution makes no mention of that. It's merely, a contract between you on our behalf. And that's it. There's no reference to everyone sharing information freely. And let's be frank, past history doesn't really indicate we get information freely or at the same time or things like that. And that's the way it works. So I would urge you to, consider accepting the amendment or withdrawing entirely and just doing the budget on your, doing the contract on your own, simply because you can. It's the right thing to do to get something passed that you want to see passed with no feathers being ruffled. why make a political argument that does not need to be here? I mean, this is a political hire. That's fine, but there's no need for it to be its own resolution. There's no need to take it from the law department. I sincerely urge you to either accept the amendment as a friendly amendment, or if failing that, just tabling the sucker and hire the man on your own, which you can do right now. Legislative vote is correct. You can do it right now.
Legislator DeFlorio,
Yes, Legislator DeFlorio.
through you to the administration, can we just confirm that a couple of times it's been stated there's plenty of money in that account to pay for this contract? And before we make a decision on this amendment or tabling this referral, can we get confirmation that that is indeed correct?
Mr. President, Robert Franklin, County Finance. I do actually have SAP open. There are sufficient available appropriations within the clerk of the legislature's organization. There are sufficient funds within the Republican staff organization. So the other option is to amend this to transfer appropriations over to clerk of the legislature's organization.
So, Mr. President, if Legislative DeFlorio is done.
Are you done,
Sorry.
Legislator?
Yeah. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Well, it sounds like the answer to the question is yes, we can do this through a number of different offices, actually. Why pick a conflict we don't need to pick? Why can't we just do the right thing and you still get the same result? That just seems like it's a no-brainer, easy peasy thing we can do without getting some blood sport about who wins what when we're talking about very, very, very small amounts of money, which in a $1.3 billion budget, $5,000 is small money.
Yeah, Mr. President, this is Legislator Brew.
Yes, Legislator Brew.
Yes, as long as we're hearing Director Franklin state that there are funds available in either one of those two budget items that line items he mentioned, either the clerk's office or the legislative staff office. I tend to agree, well, not tend to, I do agree with Legislator Baroth and Legislator Felder that why not just simply adopt this amendment to direct the source of those funds from the legislative office. I see no harm in that. It still gets the work done. And my only follow-up question, and it is germane to this referral, is that do we know when we might expect the results back by the budget review? I'm just looking for adequate time for us to be able to take a look at his findings prior to the Ways and Means Committee, which is, I believe, is December 4th.
Second. It's the second.
I'm sorry, the second.
Is this an amendment?
Right now, we're on the amendment.
Yeah, we're still on the amendment for Legislator Baroth.
Right.
There's a couple options, obviously, for just on the amendment. We can vote on the amendment that you have in front of us. Legislator Baroth can withdraw the amendment. We would table the amendment. Those are the options that we have in front of us to get back to the main motion.
What would you like to do, Legislator Baroth?
Well, just so I'm sorry, the dog is running around. So am I correct to understand that if I withdraw the amendment, we're going to table this and move on from there? Mr. President, is that correct?
If you withdraw it, I'm going to call a 5-minute recess, discuss it with my caucus, and then we'll get back to the meeting.
Okay, fair enough. I'll do that with the understanding that depending upon the results of the caucus meeting on your side, I might reintroduce the amendment. Okay. Okay. Then in which case I withdraw the amendment.
Okay, 5-minute recess, please.
Yeah, call, I'm gonna call Frank, call Sabrina.
Hi, Joe.
Can we make sure everybody's muted, please?
Yes, sir.
I didn't mind eavesdropping.
going to call the meeting back to order. Legislator Baroff, you don't have to make your amendment. We're going to withdraw this and go forward as you suggested, and Legislator Felder suggested.
Yeah.
So there being no unfinished business,
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Legislator Brew? Oh, we lost Legislator Brew.
Oh, hang on, he's just getting on right now. I think he's having a computer problem. Legislator Brew?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just got on, Clerk, Grant, could you please repeat the, what was just stated?
We're gonna go ahead with Legislator Baroff and Legislator Felder. We're gonna withdraw. And I just stated there being no unfinished business. Legislator Brew,
Okay, then we stand adjourned until our next scheduled legislative meeting. And I believe that is December 14th, 2021.
thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.